everyone for joining today's meetup. Today meetup is all about the introduction to Kubernetes. So it's all about like the basics of Kubernetes. I'm not going to delve into the advanced topic. But if you have any question, please feel free to ask me via the Slack channels or offline, whatever mode it's comfortable for you. Uh, so many people ping me like why I'm not hosting these meetups on the regular basis. And the reason for that is like I was working on one of the book called AWS for System Administrator which was released this week. So if any one of you, I will not say this is the best book or uh, basically in this book, I just share my experience, like whatever the way I think about AWS and the way I learn AWS, I just share my experience in this book. So if anyone is interested, please feel free to ping me. I have some discount code available for the Kindle edition as well as the paperback edition. So with that said, let's come to the main topic for today, which is Kubernetes. So these are the things which I've even mentioned in the meetup link. These are the topics. Can everyone please mute yourself? Yeah, thank you. So these are the topics which I am going to cover it today, which is like introduction to Kubernetes, the Kubernetes architecture. Then we will look at one of the tool called Kind, which is called Kubernetes in Docker. Uh, the way this is one of the way I will show you how to install Kubernetes cluster. Then we will go by deploying our first pod, which is the Kubernetes way of defining the containers. And in this meetup, we will strictly delve into or we will strictly focus onto the Docker. And but the Kubernetes supports some other uh, containerized things like, for example, container D or CRIO. And the last thing is we are going to see one of the dashboard called K9S, which I found it pretty useful, and it's definitely means it increased my productivity by using this dashboard. I mean, it's the easier way to manage your Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so with introduction out of the way, let's dive into the first topic called introduction to Kubernetes. And if you go to, let me first give you this link called kubernetes.io/docs. This will be your go-to link. Like this is the first place where you can go and check for any of the Kubernetes related doubt. I mean, their documentation is pretty good. So let me post this link. And in this next 1 hour, we are going to refer this link a lot of time, this kubernetes.io. So now if you go to this kubernetes.io and getting started, and you will end up somewhere here. What is Kubernetes? This guy. And this will give you a definition like Kubernetes is portable, extensible, open source platform for managing containerized workload and service. Uh, let's not go to this templated definition and let me go to my own definition of what exactly how I think what Kubernetes is. Okay. So what exactly is a Kubernetes? So for that, like I told you guys, for this meetup, we will strictly focus on Docker, like how we are going to use Kubernetes to manage our Docker container. So first thing is, if you want to run your Docker container, or if you want to run some images, which is running your application, the command you're going to run is called, for example, docker run -d and whatever be your image name, right? This works perfectly fine. If I need to spun one more of this Docker container, I can run this command again, right? I can run this command again. If I need to run one more, I can run this command again. This works fine if I have a handful of container, like 5, 10, 20 containers. But this solution is not scalable if I have, like, for example, 100,000 or 1,000 of a container. So I need some kind of a solution who is responsible for managing my container. And that is where the Kubernetes shine. Like Kubernetes can manage like your 100 or 1,000 of containers. So Kubernetes is basically kind of an orchestration system which is responsible for spinning up your application. Okay, so this is the one advantage of using Kubernetes. The second thing is I'm running these container. Let's say at a scale of 100 to 1000. I need someone who is going to monitor these container. And if my container goes down, there should be something which is going to bring up these containers back. So what Kubernetes does, and that is what we are going to see in the architecture section, that Kubernetes something has called controllers, which is constantly going to monitor your container. And if that container goes down, it is going to replace that container with the new one. So that is the second advantage of using Kubernetes. The third one is, let's take an example, simple example of your two-tier application. We have the web tier, and in the backend we have the app tier. And let's say in the app tier, we have a number of containers which are running. Like for example, your front end, you have a one container, and the backend, you have the multiple container, like 3 applications which are running. So you need something, some kind of a solution which is going to distribute your load or your load balance the load between these 3 containers. So for example, when the request goes from web to app, it will first hit this app container, and this app, and first it will hit this app one. In second, this is going to hit the app. If the second request come, it is going to hit the app two, and the third request will goes to app three in the round robin fashion. And I already spoke, if this app one goes down, Kubernetes is going to replace it with the new container. That's the one thing. But the important thing is, after replacing that container, it will make sure the request will route it to that particular container. For example, if app1 goes down, it will replace it something like app4, which is the same version of app, but the new container. But it need to make sure that once the app1 been removed, the request will be properly routed to the app4. So Kubernetes has something called a service resource, which is going to take care of this. Okay. So to recap that, what Kubernetes does for us, it will manage like 100 or 1000 of container for us. If the container goes down, it is going to bring up this container. Okay, it will constantly monitor it and see if this desired number of containers will always be running for you. And the last thing is, it's going to route the request to the proper one. Okay, in case if the container goes down, it will remove that container from, let's say for the timing, we will say it's as a load balancer, and it is going to properly route the request to the backend container. The appropriate term for that in Kubernetes world is called service discovery. Okay, so this is the introduction to Kubernetes. I will pause here for a 10-second for any question.
My question was that we currently use ELBs and Dockers. What's the benefit of using Kubernetes?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. And let me try to explain you in the terms of cost benefits. So whatever the resources we are going to use in the Kubernetes, they are completely free of cost. And I will come back to that part, how it is free of cost. ELB and all these things, like uh, in the next meetups or a meetup after that, I'm going to explain you guys in terms of ingress. So in case of your AWS, whatever the resource you are going to use, for example, ELB or it's ALB or NLB, they are going to cost you. But in Kubernetes, all these resources are free of cost. So that is one biggest advantage of using Kubernetes object. Second thing, it's more, that's what I feel, it's more on the configurable. So for example, ALB, whatever you're going to use, you will be restricted on the AWS front of perspective, like whatever the features they are going to provide you. But I'm taking example of Ingress, and I know we are jumping ahead, but Ingress, you have a lot of options. For example, you can use an Nginx Ingress, or you can use a Traffic Ingress. There are a bunch of open source options, or even you can use Istio as an Ingress solution. So that is the other advantage. I think to answer your question, one the cost, and second one I feel is the flexibility. So did I answer your question?
Prashant, I have a question here.
Yeah,
Say if you
sure.
use EKS, right, from
hmm
AWS,
hmm
Kubernetes, so that if you use that service, then it comes behind a load balancer,
hmm
so we cannot use our own load that. So,
Uh,
so
y- no. So even I'm using EKS in my environment, and you can use Ingress, like whatever I have told you guys, you can use your own solution on the top of it. So I can route a traffic using, I mean, yes, you can use ELB, but at the same time, you can use Ingress to route the traffic. Uh, I am sorry, Arpita and Kanan, I need to stop you guys, but these are the advanced topic, and this is like a basic one, but I'm more than happy to answer your question offline. Is fine?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, in next week or next to next week, I'm going to cover all these topics like deployment, services, ingress. So maybe at that time I can answer your question better. But at the same time, you can always ping me on Slack. I'm more than happy to answer any question related to that. So with that out of the way, let's go to the second topic of today, which is called Kubernetes architecture. And once again, I will go with my own definition of this Kubernetes architecture, but we can always refer back to that kubernetes.io. And if you go to kubernetes.io, this is how the architecture of Kubernetes will look like. Okay. So we will come back to this, but let me start with my own definition of how I think the Kubernetes architecture look like. So one thing to know, uh, yeah, Abhishek, we can discuss those query over the Slack channel, definitely. So Kubernetes is a distributed system, okay? And we will come back to the distributed part later. But think of it like we have a master and then we have the worker. Okay. In most of the cases, we have one master or a bunch of master. Like in case of, uh, once again, like AWS provides something called EKS, which is the Elastic Kubernetes Service. And when you deploy that EKS cluster, you will get a three different masters for that. But let's come back to again to this. We have one master who is going to give the instruction. And then we have the worker node where your actual workload is going to run. So Kubernetes works on the same principle. Okay. Now let's try to break it down into piece by pieces. Okay. But before that, I'm just giving you a word of caution that uh, Kubernetes is complicated. And the reason for that, like why it's complicated, is because it has got too many components. And this is one place where most of the beginners called stumble up because they need to learn all these components. And that I will put myself on the same shoes because when I started learning Kubernetes, I find it out like I need to take care of all these components. And later on, I will tell you like how to make your life easy. But just a word of caution, it is complicated. It is one of the most complicated thing that I have ever learned. So if you're not aware of these, there are so many new things which will be coming in your way in next few minutes. Okay. So first thing for Kubernetes, let's try to drill down and take a look at what exactly lies in the at the master level. So first thing is called API server. Okay. And I will try to give my own definition and try to make the thing easy for you. So if you think of a API server, you can think of it as like a brain of Kubernetes. So each and everything, if anything, it's need to interact with the Kubernetes, that is going to interact with the API server. Okay. So we can stop at this point. We can think of it like a brain of Kubernetes. Any component in Kubernetes, if they not need to talk to each other, the different component which we are going to talk it next, they need to go through the API server. Okay. So first component is API server. Second component is called etcd, which is called a key value data store for Kubernetes. So your cluster information, for example, how many nodes are running in your cluster, that is going to store in your inside this etc etcd. How many containers are running, uh, how many nodes are running in your cluster, like all the information about your Kubernetes cluster is stored inside this etcd etcd database. Okay. Then we have scheduler, and just to be clear, at this point of time, we are talking all in terms of master server. We are going to take a look at the worker node later, but the first thing is the master server. And the third component is called scheduler. As the name suggests, it is responsible for scheduling something. So for example, in your Kubernetes cluster, the request comes to your API server, and then it's the part or it's the work of a scheduler to schedule that request. So for example, the request come, you need to spin up these many number of container. So scheduler will goes to all the nodes in your cluster and see which has the resource available. So let me take it to the very simple example. You decided to run a container which required one CPU and let's say 1 GB of memory. So in the simplest term, you can think of it like scheduler is going to scan your cluster and see at this point of time which node has this much amount of capacity available. Okay, I mean it is much more complicated than this. It depend upon a lot of other components like taints and toleration and labels and everything. But this is the first session, so I don't want to go into all those complex words. But let's try to understand in the simplest term. The work of a scheduler is to schedule your workload. And the last component is called controllers from master point of view. So during the introduction session, I told you, like, for example, one of the key feature of Kubernetes is if your container goes down, it will constantly going to monitor your container and bring it back. So that is one of the function of a controller. There are a bunch of controller available, but for example, this is called replication controller. That is a function of that, where you can define, for example, I always want one container to be up and running. So let's say I'm running, let's say my web application. So if I will define that replication controller equal to 1, or actually the actual term is called replica set, and we are going to discuss more about it. So if I define replica set equal to 1, then controller is constantly going to monitor it. And if if that web component goes down, it will bring that up. So that is a function of a controller. So just to reiterate that, we have a master which is going to assign the workload to the worker node. And we haven't spoke about the worker component. And the master has the 4 major component. First is called API server, which is the brain of Kubernetes. Every decision in the Kubernetes cluster is going to take by this API server. Then we have the etcd, which is the key value store. Think of it like a database for Kubernetes, where all the information about your cluster is being stored. Third one is called scheduler, which is responsible for scheduling your workload. And last one is called controller, which will make sure that the desired number of servers is always up and running in your cluster. Okay. Before jumping to the worker node component, I will pause here again for 10 seconds. And do you guys have any question related to that, to the master component?
Prashant, scheduler once again, please.
Okay. So the main function of a scheduler is to schedule your load. And I'm going to speak more about it when we are going to learn about the pod. So the main function of a scheduler is to schedule your workload, which means if you have a request, like you want to run your Nginx application, let's say, and that application required one CPU and 1 GB of memory. And let me drill it down to the other way. So let's say you have a Kubernetes master, okay? And then you have a 3 worker node, a simplest example. So out of these 3 worker node, in whatever node we have that 1 CPU and 1 GB of memory available, it is going to schedule your pod. The actual term for that is pod into that worker node. So basically think of scheduler like someone who is going to schedule your workload. That is clear?
Sir,
Any other? Just Q value. Okay.
So, Prashant,
Hmm.
you said we have a bunch of masters and bunch of workers. So, is that true that we have more than one master?
Yes, and I'm going to show you how to set it up with the help of a kind.
Okay.
Any other question? Okay. Sorry guys, we are running behind schedule, so let me quickly jump over to the worker parts. So on the worker node, we have two main components. First is called kubelet, and second one is called kubeproxy. Only two components. Like the master, we have these four major components, but on the worker node, we have two components called kubelet or kubeproxy. Okay. So kubelet, you can think it's someone who is going to take an instruction from the master node. So it's master who is going to tell him that you need to perform this task. And then kubelet is going to perform that task on the behalf of a master. So to understand that, this master is going to tell this kubelet, okay, spin up one container on this particular node. And this kubelet is going to run in this example, for example, on all the three worker node, take that instruction, and like we spoke about like scheduler, depending upon in whatever node the resources are available, it is going to spin up the container on that particular node. So basically the function of a kubelet is to take the instruction and to perform that particular task on behalf of master. And once he performs that task, he's going to send his status back to the master node, which is the API server, and then all that data, let's for example, it spun up one container here, that information is then stored in the etcd store. Okay, so I will speak about it like this. So this is your API server, okay, and this is your kubelet. So in the cluster, you have the requirement that you need to spin up one pod, okay, or we haven't spoke about the pod. Uh, let's say in the cluster, you have a requirement of spinning up one container. So that request will goes to the API server. API server then send that instruction to a kubelet. In that part, the uh, scheduler comes in, and scheduler will take care of like, okay, out of these three workers node, in which kubelet in which worker node that container will spun up. Kubelet is going to spin up that container once it know that in whatever worker node he need to spin up that container. Send the status, whatever be the status. If it's able to successfully bring up that container on that node, back to the API server, and then API server is going to contact the etcd, and that data will be stored on the etcd server or your key value data store. So etcd will store that information. Okay, so we have one uh, container running in our cluster, and that has been spun up. This is an important concept to understand, like how this whole cycle works. Okay, and then the last component we need to understand is called kubeproxy server. Okay, so again, to explain this with a simple example, I can spoke about this in terms of web and app. Okay, so let's say this is your architecture, your two-tier architecture. Now web is running on one server, one of the worker node, and let's say your app will spin up on two other worker node. And these two components or these two containers will need to talk to each other. So there should be some component which make it possible for these two components to talk to each other. And that is where kubeproxy comes into picture. So basically, in the simplest term, in most of the cases, if you are aware of this, these are called IP tables rule, which is the basic Linux functionality. So kubeproxy will set up, not always, just a word of caution, but in most of the cases where I have worked, it's the IP tables rule set up at the worker level, your worker node level, and it will have the rules like how this web is going to interact with the app. Okay. So first is the kubelet, which is going to take the instruction and spun up the server, and kubeproxy is making sure how these component is going to talk to each other. I will pause here again for 10 seconds. Any question related to this, like the architecture of Kubernetes, the different component? Because this is an important one to understand before you start spinning up your own servers. So in some cases, these are called control plane, like this master component, and these workers node, like we speak about. So you have scheduler, you have a etcd, you have the API server, and then you have this uh, controllers, which you have in a bunch. If you are going to the cloud provider, then they will add something called cloud providers option. I'm not seeing in this picture, but these cloud controllers.
So from whom will the API server will get the instructions?
So basically from your client, which we are going to see it next, because you are the one who is going to
So,
inform him like we need this much amount of container.
so API server is going to will instruct the keylet. Sorry.
Kubelet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to instruct the
Okay.
kubelet.
Thank you.
So Prashant, I have one question. Like, let's say like we have two pods running on the two different nodes. Then will they use kubeproxy or they have some plugins or some network configuration we have to do manually, like route
Ye-
tables and all?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I tried to explain the really simplest terms, but it depend upon some network plugins. There are a bunch of them called, for example, Calico, and I think the last I worked with the VMnet. But yeah, you are correct. Actually, it's a plugin, but I am trying to explain you guys in the simplest of the terms. So yes, and that we are going to, I am going to show you in the future session how this whole communication works. So sorry, I am trying to explain you guys in the simplest of terms, but it is way more complicated.
Okay, okay, got it. Thanks.
Any other question before we jump to the next section? Okay. So, I mean, you don't need to know about all these components if you're a developer or something like that, but I mean, it's better to understand like how this whole thing works. And yes, you guys are absolutely correct. We have like these plugins architecture, like how these different nodes communicate with each other. But this is the first session. I don't want to make it too complicated for you guys. Okay. So definitely I will set up some session related to specifically for networking, and I will show you all the plugins which has been involved in this whole communication. And yes, it's way more complicated than this. Okay. So let's jump to our next section, which is called kind, or called Kubernetes in Docker. But before that, I mean, I think there are few people you guys already know about all the different ways we can install this Kubernetes cluster. And now you have some understanding about the master and worker node. So let me give you the idea, like what are the different ways you can install this cluster. So let me start with this. Installing Kubernetes was always a pain in the past. Before all these before these cloud providers start writing their own solution. Okay, so first thing, if you guys are following Kubernetes for some time, uh, maybe you guys have heard about this called Kubernetes the hard way. Oh man, it is the hard way. This is one of the famous GitHub repo provided by the Kelsey Hightower, in which you can build your Kubernetes cluster from scratch. So let me ping you this one. And this was one of the famous resource when I was started using Kubernetes. I mean, it's way back in 3 or 4 years back. So let me see if I have that link open. Yes. So here, so think of it like for example, in case of Linux, either you can install a RPM or you can have compiled it from the source and then build your own application or build your own specific RPM, right? So if you want to build your Kubernetes cluster from ground up, this is the one of the way. Kubernetes is the hard way. And as it says the hard way, this is really the hard way where you are going to compile all the binaries. Okay. So we are not going to touch on this one. The second one is which most of the people follows, or not most of the people, at least I followed till I came to know about this kind, is called kubeadm. Okay. And there's a utility which is available called kubeadm, through which you can spin up your own cluster. Similar to, it's not as complicated as Kubernetes the hard way, but it still required a bunch of steps you need to follow. So for example, you need to install all these things. I will post you this link. Like you need to install these bunch of RPM first, kubelet, kubeadm, kubectl, and then follow this link to install your cluster. Okay, so let me ping you guys if anyone is interested in that. So second way is kubeadm, which is much simpler as compared to the Kubernetes the hard way, but it still involved a bunch of other steps which you need to follow. The third one is, which is really popular, and as far as I read over the internet, is like the solution provided by the cloud providers. So for example, I think we already spoke about this one. For AWS, it's called Elastic Kubernetes Service, and for Google, it's called GKS, and I think for Azure, honestly, I never used it. It's called AKS. So whatever the things you are doing it manually so far, like spinning up the master node, and even in AWS will will means I forget the name of that, but AWS will even take care of your worker node part.
Fargate.
Yeah, exactly. Fargate. Yeah, if you
Yeah,
will use
it's Fargate.
Yep, exactly. So if you use Fargate, AWS will even take care of your worker node part. So that is a managed solution provided by AWS. And the way I spun up my cluster in AWS, and that is just my own way, is called a utility called EKSCTL, which is called Kestel or EKSCTL, whatever way you want to pronounce it. And using that, you can spin up your cluster by using this simple command line. It's a third-party project, which is I guess by ViewNet. And under the hood, uh, give you it spun up some of the CloudFormation template and spun up the cluster for you. So that is how I even used some of the Terraform to spin up my EKS cluster. But I can tell you based on my experience in most of the production environment which I have worked, we are using this EKS. So I can ping you the link if any one of you interested on this. And finally, the last way, which I have found like few years back, not few years, I think almost like few months back, is called Kind. And just to be honest with you guys, this is basically for your testing purpose, where you want to spin up your cluster and test something and then get rid of it. It's not for production use. It's called Kubernetes in Docker. It is one of the simplest way which I have found it out to spin up your Kubernetes cluster just in a matter of minutes. So let me show you rather than I will speak about it. It's pretty simple. And I even wrote a blog article later to that. I can ping you guys that blog. Not this terminal dashboard. I should have it open somewhere. Yes, this one. It's pretty straightforward. Okay. So installation is pretty straightforward. It's just one binary called kind. But just one of the prerequisite for this is like you should have the Go installed in your system, and you should have Docker up and running. Okay. Now let's go to the practical part, how we can spin up our cluster using kind. So let me show you this. Okay. Hopefully you guys will be able to see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You little
So
bit zoom.
sure. Oh man, this is always a pain. I don't know how to zoom this guy up.
I think folks can zoom from their dashboard, so maybe, I mean, from their screen. We have
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So this is the simplest way. I can ping you this command. Sorry about that. To spin up your cluster. Let me ping you
Can
this
you show
command and
that YAML file? Can you show
yeah,
that YAML
yeah.
file?
I'm going to show you all these things, but just telling you how simple it is to spin up your cluster using kind. Let me ping you this command. Okay. So what exactly I'm telling kind? I mean, these things are self-explanatory. Kind create a cluster for me with the name of my kind cluster, and then we need to specify this config file. I will show you this config file. If you do not specify this option -name my kind cluster, kind will automatically give your cluster some random name. Before executing this command, let me show you the example config file. This one. We are going to discuss about what exactly is this kind, this API version, and all this node definition. But you need to define this for the timing. Let's understand, like you need to define these components. The important thing for you is the node equal to role. For example, the control plane. So how many number of node or how many number of master or worker node you need for your cluster, that part you need to define it here. So in this case, I'm specifying in this config file that I need one master node and two worker node. And that's what I told you guys in case if I need to set up a multi-master cluster. So let's say I need two master and let's say 5 worker node. I can simply specify here and kind will automatically take care of it. And this is how simple it is. Yes, Kanan. Control plane is same as a master. Yes. And kind will automatically take care of spinning up the control plane or the master node, two master node and 5 worker node for us. So let me show you with the help of one at least, and then we will see if we have time to go over it. So within a matter of minutes, your Kubernetes cluster for your testing purpose will at least be up and running. And in that,
Question.
yeah, please.
So this kind project, who is maintainer of this? Is this Kubernetes or someone else?
I think it's an open source project. I don't think so. Kubernetes manage it, as far as I know, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, and the second question is like the three nodes, right? What will be the configuration, like the resource requirement and all?
So that you can specify, even you can specify what, so for example, this is going to pull the latest version of the image or not the latest, even you can specify, for example, you want 1.18 version of the image, you can do that. Second thing is you can even specify the configuration requirement. So it is going to scan your host. For example, in this case, this is my laptop, and depending upon that, it is going to configure that. But to be honest with you, I never played with those components. But yes, I am sure it is possible.
Okay, thanks.
So See this. This is spinning up the cluster using this version of image. It is preparing all the worker node for you. It is doing, it's just the configuration thing. This is one question which somebody asked. It's called CNI, which is called Container Networking Interface, which I'm going to spoke in the future section. But this is how the different worker node and the master node is going to communicate with each other. Then the bunch of storage classes, and anyone who uh, spin up your cluster using kubeadm, you know that at the end you need to run something called a kubeadm join command. So it is even taking care of joining your worker node back to your master node. So it is so simple, and you see, like, I think it's just a 1 minute or 2 minutes, your Kubernetes cluster is up.
Prashant, how do he get that node information? Like, do we have done some networking, like how, or it will automatically select like these are the workers, like?
So those are the workers you have specified here, right? It knows that these are the workers, and let me show you like how this look like. Just give me 1 minute. So in order to interact with your kind cluster, so this is the name you have given to your cluster, right? Kind, my kind cluster. I don't know why I gave this, but this is a cluster.
And for running this kind, do we need some plugin or like to install in our IDE, or what we have to do like in our system?
So that's what I mentioned, you guys. You need Go. That Go need to be installed, and Docker should be up and running. That's the only two things.
Okay.
You need to download this binary and make sure it will be in your path.
Okay.
Okay. So let me see. See, your kind cluster or your cluster is up and running with one master. Let me remove the wide option so that you will, at least for the first timer, you will be able to see it. You have a one master node and two workers node which you have specified, and they all are in ready state. The time it will be up and the version. If you need more information, like you can do -o wide so that you can get the internal IP, external IP, and the operating system image it is using. And all these are customizable. You can even insert your own image. I mentioned those things in my blog. So if anybody is interested, just go to the blog and you will get all the information. Any question? I know we are running out of time, so I quickly want to cover the other topics also. But
One small question. Where are you running this command? On EC2 or on your local computer?
my local computer.
Okay.
So, Prashant, how this is authenticated from your local computer to this kind? Is there any config file this kind cluster will maintain?
Yes. So if you go here, so basically it's going to read your Kubernetes config, which is kubeconfig. And if you need to see, I think it's K9S. No, not K9S. I think I specified that in my blog, the configuration file. So basically it is going to run your own cluster. So let me see. So to answer your question, yes, it's going to maintain its configuration file. And 1 second, let me give you this. kubectl cluster info. So see, it is running your cluster. So as you know that the port of control plane is, I think 6443, it is using some different port, and it is going to, why I'm not able to see that file, kube. So it's going to refer to your same kubeconfig file. Now the other file it will refer, it created its own directory. I should have mentioned it somewhere, but I'm not able to find it. Basically, this is how it do it. I know I did not give you the information what is this cluster info and this is. So that's why I try to refrain it to show it to everyone, but because you asked this question, I will show you. And this one. So it is getting all this information from here that this is a kind cluster. Now I will get back to you on this. If you can ping me on Slack, and I will give you the information from where it exactly it's going to refer to those files. I'm not able to find it now.
Okay, okay, no problem. Thanks.
Okay. If there is no other question, let's jump to the next topic, which is a pod, and which is the most important one, I feel, because this is where you get your hands dirty and start playing with the Kubernetes. So rather than me explaining the pod, if anybody wants to pitch in and share their experience, what exactly is a pod? Or just in the interest of the time, let's forget about it. Let me try to explain what is exactly the pod. So pod, can you think of it like a smallest object in your Kubernetes cluster? Okay. So the way the Kubernetes work, and this is what I tried to explain it from the start, that Kubernetes support different orchestration system, not only Docker. But in this whole demo, I'm trying to explain you in the context of a Docker. So in Docker, we are aware of something called containers, right? That is where our workload runs. But the Kubernetes does not directly interface with Docker. So if the Kubernetes need to spun up the container, and so now you know that there's something called kubelets and an API server. The kubelet is not going to spun up your Docker container directly. It will do it with the help of something called a pod. Okay. Now the question is why Kubernetes does not directly interacting with the Docker. Like why doesn't Kubernetes does not spun up the Docker container? Why it is spinning it via pod? What is the advantage we are getting out of it? So I will again pause for a 10-second. Anyone knows why Kubernetes means why Kubernetes following this kind of architecture?
Because they do not want any dependency directly with the Docker, because there are other container runtime engine like Docker and
Yep.
the others also, right? So that is why they came up with this way.
Yeah, that is one of the reason. Any other reason? I mean, I never explored that what Mahesh mentioned, but can't work directly on the container instead it works on the pod. So let me give you in the interest of our time. So one of the advantage is that pod can contain multiple container. Now the question remain the same. What is the advantage we are getting if a pod is containing a multiple container? For example, we have the web container, we have the app container, and which is a part of the same pod. So the advantage which Kubernetes explain, like if you are running a multiple container and they are the part of the same pod, the way how the pod is going to treat all those container. So when we have the multiple container running inside the pod, they are going to share the same network and the same storage resources. So whatever the networks, so for example, if the web and the app, they are the part of the same pod, they will not go through the entire network lifecycle or the networking, for example, the networking interface, not the lifecycle, to interact with the app component. So if web need to interact with the app, it will interact via the local host. That is one of the biggest advantage. Second thing is if there is some storage space which they both need to access, then this will be a shared storage space which both web and app can access. You're getting my point? So if these both web and app need to interact with the same space, So the pod will expose it in the same space.
So can we say like separation of concerns?
Yes, exactly. Separation of concerns. So spinning up a multiple pod in a container is a kind of an advanced concept. And the way I have spun it up in my production environment is something you guys may be aware of called Istio, which is a kind of a sidecar container. And then we have the other containers like init container, whose work is just to perform its own means its task and then just die. These are all advanced concepts which I don't want to speak it now, but just think of it like a pod. Uh, okay, so the bottom line is if you need to interact or if you need to spin up your containers, in a case of a Kubernetes cluster, you need to go via the pod, which is the simplest entity which is provided by the Kubernetes. Okay. We are at 9:03, so I want to wrap up this session by 9:10. So let me go over it, how you can spin up your pod. So there are two ways you can spin up your pod. One is called declarative way. Okay. And the second way is called the imperative approach. Imperative. So in a declarative way, you can specify or you specify your resource in the form of a YAML file. Okay. And one of the biggest advantage of this approach, so if you are putting everything in a YAML file, you can version control it, right? The second way is you can just run a command to spin up your resource, but the problem is those changes are not being tracked anywhere. So let me show you rather than talking about it. So first let me try with the imperative approach. So now let's say my requirement is I want to spin up one Nginx Docker container. And now you understand that the way we are going to interact with it, means Kubernetes is going to interact with it, is with the help of a pod. So now we are not going to use a term called container. We are going to use a pod. And under the hood, we all know that pod is going to spin up one container for us. And who is spinning up the container for us? It's called kubelet, right? So the way you are going to interact with your Kubernetes cluster is with the help of a utility called kubectl. kubectl is your front-facing endpoint who is going to interact with your kubectl with your Kubernetes cluster. And this kubectl is going to send all of your requests to the to your Kube API server. So now, if I need to spin up my pod for Nginx, the way I can spin up is with the help of command called kubectl. I need to specify run, the name of my pod. Let's say I will say, okay, Nginx 1 is fine. And then I need to specify my Docker image, which is -- image equal to Nginx. So let me copy paste this command and give it to you guys. So now you are spinning up your first pod. Once again, you need to run the command called kubectl run because you want to run it. Nginx, the name of your container or the pod, not container pod, and the image. You can specify other option also, but let's start with a really basic one and enter. Now, in order to see what is the pod you have spun, as you can see in the front of it, it's called a pod. I need to run command called kubectl get pod. And here you can see the name is Nginx 1, whatever we have specified, and the status is called container creating. And anybody who is aware of Linux, there is something called a command called watch to see the status of your, means you watch refreshes your command after every 2 seconds. So in case of a Kubernetes, if you want to see it, you can specify -w command and it's automatically refresh after every 2 seconds. So now you see that the container is up and running. So let me give you all these two commands also. Okay. So now your first container is running. Sorry, I'm still saying container. Your first pod is running, and you see the status of it with using a command called kubectl get pod. In order to get a detailed information about this pod, you can run a command called kubectl describe pod nginx. And here you will see the bunch of information. For example, the name. We haven't spoke about the namespace. So by default, everything will be running on the default namespace. A bunch of other things like in which pod or in which node. So if you remember, get nodes. Okay. So we have these 3 nodes up and running. We have spoke about it like similar to pod, the way you can see your cluster is with the help of command called kubectl get nodes. We have 1 master node and 2 worker node. Okay. Now, if I need to see in which node my pod is running, I can use some option called -o wide. So here you can see that Nginx container is running on my client cluster worker 2, this node. Okay. This guy. And we have spoke about this command called describe, where we can get a more information about your pod. This is a bunch of information which we haven't spoken about it so far, but we will going to see it in the future meetups. And the important thing for you guys at this point of time is called events, where you can see what exactly happened behind the scene. When you executed that command Kubernetes run, it started your container, it created a container, it pulled the image, this Nginx which you have specified from Docker Hub. This is done. And finally, your pod is up and running on the worker node, this one. Okay. So this is an imperative approach to spin up your worker node or to spin up your pod. Now let me go to the declarative approach, how to do that. So there are multiple ways. If you go to the kubernetes.io, they have a bunch of example somewhere here. The same thing which we have specified on the command line, you can do it with the help of this definition. But let me show you how to create this file using the command line itself. So the same command I'm going to run, Kubernetes run. Okay. But this time, rather than running it, I will specify --dry run equal to client -o YAML. So this time I am specifying it rather than creating this pod, do the dry run, which I think all of you should aware of that we are not actually executing this command. We are saying it just to perform the initial check and print that output for me in the form of a YAML file. Let me ping you this. It's even support JSON. I think so. Yep, you can even get the output in the form of JSON. Okay, and let me change the name of this to, let's say, Nginx2. It can be any name. And I can store this output in nginx2.yaml. 2.yaml file. So now this is a declarative approach. Now we can talk about these field, which is called API version. Sorry, I clicked the wrong tab. Okay. Now let's take a look at these field, which is called API version. Then we have, why I'm doing this? Okay. We have these different field called API version. Then we have the kind, metadata, and spec. So for all of your file, let's copy this one. And let's try to explore this. Hey guys, I know we are running over time, but I thought it will be over by 9:10, but we are running like just 5 or 10 minutes. I should wind it up by 9:20. Everyone is okay, right? Okay, so first field is called API version. This is the version of your Kubernetes API. Okay, so depending upon what resources we are creating, we need to use the right API version. So if you go here, I think there are multiple ways. You can go to the kubernetes.io and then docs and then can find out this API version. And the way I do it is with the help of some command called kubectl API-resources. So if you go above, up, and you can see for a pod, the API version is v1. Okay, so this is the way, like these are the version of API which you need to use. And this has been specified by Kubernetes. In future, we are going to see the other thing, for example, daemon sets or deployment. They have a different API version. Okay. The second field in that is called a kind. And this is again depend upon the type of resource or the type of object you want to create. So here we want to create a pod, but similar to what I showed you, we have our different resources available in Kubernetes. For example, we have jobs, cron jobs, stateful set, replica set, daemon set. So depending upon the type of resource we are creating, we need to use that kind. Okay. Don't worry about it if you do not understand the kind part. I'm going to talk about it in the future meetups. The next field is, somehow my mouse is horrible today. The next field is called metadata. And metadata, as you know, is a data about your data. Okay. So whatever the name you want to specify for your object. For example, in this case, if you remember that in the kubectl run command, I specify the name of my object as a nginx1 or nginx2. This is how we are going to specify it here in the metadata field. The name. Okay. These names are strict that you cannot use any other field because Kubernetes expect it. But if you want to specify labels, you can specify any label. So here I can specify more label, for example, name equal to web. But Kubernetes expect these fields. For example, the label name should be labels and name should be name. It cannot be a name one or name two. It should always be name and label. But inside this label field, it's a kind of a dictionary where you can specify, for example, data center is equal to prod, whatever the field you want to specify. And last and the most important is the spec, where you can specify your container specs. So for example, I want the image, which is the Nginx, and the name of my container is called Nginx2. Okay. So by default, it will go to the Docker and try to pull the image, whatever you specify from Docker Hub. So if you specify some other image here, for example, BusyBox, it will go to the Docker Hub and try to pull the Docker Hub, the BusyBox image from Docker Hub. And same thing, you can check it out by using a kubectl describe command. Now we have the file, right? Now the next question is how to create your pod using this file, nginx2.yaml. And same thing, we are going to use the utility called kubectl. Okay. We need to specify a command called create -f. The last time we used a command called run. This time we are going to use a create. -f is for file. And then we can specify the file called nginx2.yaml, the file which we have created. Same, we are going to run that kubectl get pod. We see the container is in creating state, and we can specify -w to watch it, the status of it. Okay. And in next few seconds, this should be in the running state. So you see the container is in running state. So we have seen how to create a container using our imperative approach, like using our Kubernetes run command. And in the next way, we have seen how to use it in a declarative approach by using this YAML file. Any questions so far regarding this?
Prashant, when to use kubectl create and kubectl apply? What is exactly the difference between these two commands? Like,
Yeah, actually apply is just going to look for, so okay, actually that's a long answer for that, but can I ping you offline, because apply follow a three-way approach. It's going to save the state
okay,
in your Kubernetes cluster. So it's a little bit complicated how the apply works versus the create command. But to answer your question, I mostly use the apply command when I need to work on some of the resources which has been changed. So for example, if I change the image from Nginx to Nginx 1, I use the Nginx command if my container is already up and running. So let's say I have a container, I have a pod which is up and running, and I made some changes. So I use the Kubernetes apply command. If I need to create something from scratch, I need to use I use Kubernetes create command. That's the pattern I follow. But apply is a little bit more complicated how it works behind the scene. I can give you the docs how it exactly works, the apply command. But just in the interest of the time,
okay, thanks.
any other last minute question?
Next class.
Rahim, that's a big question. That may be probably the next Sunday. I will give you the information.
Sundays. Okay, okay, thanks.
Okay. So far, we have created our first pod using the same imperative approach and the declarative approach. And we are using this bunch of command called kubectl get pod or kubectl describe pod to see the information about that pod. Now there is a one command line utility called K9S, which I found it out really useful. That's why I want to share it with you guys. So anyone who is starting their Kubernetes journey and they don't want to memorize this bunch of commands, this is a really, really handy tool. And it's pretty simple to install. You just need to download it and again put it in your path variable. Let me ping you guys this one and show you how powerful it is. So where's my terminal? I already have this. So just you need to run K9S. Okay. It will show you your Kubernetes current state of a Kubernetes cluster. So let me go to one. And I think, let me show you this pod. Okay. Yep. Sorry, I was playing with that. That's why you are seeing some different skin. But once you logged into your Kubernetes cluster, you will see something like this. You have this Nginx 1 and Nginx 2. The same thing, we are doing it via the command line. So let me open one more terminal. So if you run this kubectl get pod, you will see these two containers, right? Nginx 1 and Nginx 2, which we have spun it up. So same thing, you are doing it here, but rather than memorizing those bunch of commands, you can just run this K9S command. Okay. Now, the next command which we have run to get more information about it is called describe command, like kubectl describe command. But I don't want to memorize this command because I'm just starting my Kubernetes journey. So if you see here, you have this option called D to describe. So just move your cursor to that particular to the specific pod and just press D. It will give you the same information that we are doing it via the command line. Just you need to press the D key. Okay. In order to come back to the main screen, just press escape. Okay. Some other thing, for example, I want to log in inside this container to get the shell prompt. If you look here, there's something called S. S is for shell. Just press S. Now you are inside that Kubernetes container. The same thing if you need to do it by the command line. I didn't show you guys, but the command is kubectl exec-t nginx 1 sh. So you need to memorize this big command rather than just press S and you are inside that container. In order to get out of it, exit. Okay. The other thing is, right now you are seeing all the container in your default namespace. We haven't spoke about the other namespace we have, but just press 0. 0 is for all, and you will see all the containers which are running. So for example, we have spoke about something called an API server. We have spoke about the controller. We have spoke about the proxy scheduler. So you see, when your Kubernetes cluster become up and running, you have the other containers which are running in the other namespace called kube system. So if I need to do the same thing via this command line, I need to run something called kubectl get pod -n kube system. I mean, I always prefer the command line, but I found this tool really handy. Rather than I need to memorize those bunch of commands, I can just quickly look at all these options and see it. So if I need to check the logs of one of the container, I'm sure we are not hitting this container, so we shouldn't have any logs. So if you look at up, we have L for logs. So I just need to press L, and because we don't have any logs, so the same thing, if you need to do it here, you need to run kubectl log and then the name of your container in the next one. Oh, sorry, it's called logs, not log. So that's the problem, like you need to memorize all these commands. Okay. So, and the last thing is, for example, if I need to search all the containers which is having a proxy name or API server or kindnet, whatever it. So just press this slash key and search for, like, let's say proxy. So let me ping you guys here. On the top, you just need to press this slash key. One second. This way. Slash and then proxy. Okay. Now, if I need to check all the deployment I have, I just need to run colon deep. Okay. Just need to run colon deploy. Or even if I need to check all the services, I just need to run colon service. We haven't spoke about these, but I'm just showing you how easy it is to use the K9s and to check for all your resources running in your cluster. So it's a pretty handy tool. There's one more tool which other people use, but I haven't used it fully. But let me give you the example of that, or I can just ping you the other tool name. It's called Lens. Yes, it's called Lens. I can show you. It's called Kubernetes Lens. But the problem is, I mean, it's more feature rich as compared to this K9s. But the problem is, it's like it's more of a CPU intensive. So whenever I run it, my system becomes really slow. So I haven't used it fully, but it is more powerful as compared to K9s. If you guys want to explore it, just use this tool, and it's pretty good. So let me stop the recording now.